What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. My name's Kyle. In tonight's video, first of all, it's July 5th. It's the last day to get that July 4th promo code for the 2022 draft kit. And in this video, this is going to probably be one of the more important videos I do before training camp starts. We're going to be looking at the entire AFC. So we have 16 teams. We're going to go division by division. I'm basically just going to list everything that I want to know about for fantasy football and who I'm drafting, who I'm avoiding, things like that. So we're going to hop right into it. We'll be referencing my 2022 projections, throughout the video as well. So we got a lot to look forward to in this video, and we're going to start here with the AFC East. This will be the Buffalo Bills, the first team that we start with, and this is a team that you want to be a part of for fantasy football. Whether it's Josh Allen, he's probably one of the safest picks you can make. Again, he's probably the first quarterback off the board. If we look at this is drafters.com ADP. He is the clear number one quarterback off the board by a good round or so. Josh Allen's all by himself in terms of ADP here. And if I wish I could filter by team. I think on Underdog you can filter by team. But then you have Stephon Diggs, the number one wide receiver. You have Gabriel Davis, who's stepping into the number two receiver role. And Jamison Crowder, who they signed from the New York Jets. Crowder and Isaiah McKenzie are both going to be competing for the slot duties. And then you still have the rookie here, Khalil Shakir, who they drafted in the 5th round. So I think these are the kind of the clear top 5 receivers. And then you're going to see Jake Kumaro, Marquez Stevenson, and Tavon Austin, Isaiah. Some of these guys try to compete for that 6th spot. But I think it's a clear 4-man, kind of with the top 5 being the rookie here. You're going to see Crowder and McKenzie split time in the slot. But Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs are going to be on the field a ton. Of course, you have Dawson Knox being the primary tight end. They did add O.J. Howard, but I'm not overly concerned about that. It sounds like O.J.'s been struggling in training camp so far. So you have a huge pecking order for targets with Stephon Diggs. I think Gabriel Davis is the clear number 2 target, and then you're going to have Crowder and McKenzie nipping at the 3-4 spot. And then the running backs. You have Devin Singletary, James Cook, Zach Moss, and then you got guys like Tywan Jones, Duke Johnson, trying to make a dent here. But I think it's a 4-man race. Devin Singletary is going to be probably the leading ball carrier. You're going to have James Cook probably be the number 2 guy, Zach Moss the 3, and then Duke Johnson's kind of an emergency, 3rd down kind of back here. But as far as the pecking order, I think we're drafting Devin Singletary to be the guy that's probably a top 30 running back for us. And if I just look at drafters.com here, let's actually look around and see, where is Devin Singletary going? Devin Singletary's got an ADP of about 91, so you can get him in the 8th round. And then not too far back is James Cook. You can get him in the 9th round. So those guys are both going pretty high. Zach Moss is going undrafted right now, and I think Duke Johnson is as well. So the smart play here to me is, I think if you want Devin Singletary on your bench, that's fine. But James Cook is a guy here who, once we see him play, he could just overtake everything. And who knows? We expect him to lead the team in receptions, but he could even lead the team in carry. So I think the smart play is to bank on James Cook being better than Devin Singletary in terms of ADP. And then the other guys, I'm not really sure we can trust them. So I just wanted to quickly show you guys. I have, I guess we'll do it by this way. We have Josh Allen as our quarterback 1 right here. By a wide margin, too. It's not even close. He's the clear number 1 guy. And then by running back for PPR purposes, I do have James Cook as RB36, and then there's Singletary, RB39. I think they're both going to cannibalize each other. You're probably going to see them mix and match, I think, for best ball purposes. The fact that you can secure this backfield for an 8th and 9th round pick, that seems pretty appealing to me. And who knows, even in a redraft league, you can do the same thing and just kind of wait and see how it goes. So I think both guys are going to be fringe RB2 flex plays. And again, based on how the season goes, we'll learn more that way. And then, of course, Stephon Diggs, my wide receiver 4, and Gabriel Davis is my wide receiver 25. I'm not going to be banking on Isaiah McKenzie or Jamison Crowder. And then as far as tight ends, I like Dawson Knox. He's my tight end 13. I think he's going to be a little bit boom bust. He did have a high touchdown rate last year with 9 total touchdowns. I have him at 7. So I think he's going to be a boom bust fringe tight end 1 this year. So that's your 2022 Buffalo Bills. Probably one of the best offenses in the league. So you want to make sure you get a piece of it. We'll move on here to the Miami Dolphins. We'll be a little bit quicker about this one. Starting quarterback, of course, Tua Tagovailoa. In case of emergency, Teddy Bridgewater will be there. They did sign Chase Edmonds from Arizona. one of the first guys to sign in free agency too. That was kind of fast. They also added Sony Michel. They also added Raheem Mostert. So 3 running backs signed to boost to bump Myles Gasket down to RB4. They still have Salvon Ahmed, Jared Dokes, and Zaquandre White. So, but for me, it's looking like Chase Edmonds as the main pass catching back. And probably it's going to be a committee, for first, second down. It's going to be a mix of Sony Michel, Raheem Mostert, Chase Edmonds. But the guy that's going to touch the ball the most is going to be Chase Edmonds. They also added Alec Ingold, so that further means they're going to commit to running the ball. So I kind of like I like Edmonds and I like Sony Michel right now at ADP. In terms of receiver, of course, Jalen Waddle is still there. They have him listed as the left wide receiver. Tyreek Hill, of course, from Kansas City. They have him listed as the right wide receiver. And then Cedric Wilson Jr. from Dallas here listed as the team's slot receiver. Now, after these 3 guys, it's pretty ugly. They lost Devontae Parker. They still have Preston Williams here, which is nice. You see Lynn Bowden Jr., Trent Sherfield, Eric Zukanma, the rookie from the 4th round here, River Crawcraft, Cody Core, Devontae Dedman, Braylon Sanders. So it's really spotty after these top 3 guys. So we're only going to worry about Waddle, Hill, and Cedric Wilson. And then, of course, there's Mike Gesicki, who kind of operates as, the number 3 receiving weapon in this. They still have a lot of tight ends on this team, too. Durham Smythe's a good tight end. Adam Shaheen's a good blocker. Hunter Long, athletic, and Sathan Carter. So they have a lot of tight ends here. But in terms of the pecking order, you're going to have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle both competing for, the 1A, the 1B slots. And then after that, Cedric Wilson is definitely below Mike Gesicki. Gesicki is going to be the 3rd leading target in this offense. So Cedric Wilson, a guy that I think for best ball leagues, that's probably where you're interested in him, but he's probably not going to be a redraft candidate at all. So it's going to all be about Waddle, Tyreek. I actually think Waddle's going to lead the team in receptions. Tyreek Hill could lead the team in yards and touchdowns. But not if Mike Gesicki has anything to say, who's the franchise tag. I believe he's playing on the franchise tag this year. So we'll see. I think this all comes back to Tua Tagovailoa, though, being the straw that stirs the drink. And I guess in terms of projections, let's take a look here. So I have Tua as my quarterback 18. In terms of drafters.com, he is being drafted pretty highly. Pick 121. That's right after Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins. So let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. QB 16. So Tua, QB 16 in the 10th round. That seems to be like fair value to me. Let's look at the running backs here. Again, Chase Edmonds. They're low on Chase Edmonds. They have him down here as ADP of 97.7, which is in the 9th round. That just seems way too cheap for, especially in a best ball, guy who's going to lead the team in running back catches. And who knows, he does have the ability to rack up carries. So I do like Chase Edmonds there. And again, the receiving is what's interesting. So Tyreek Hill going off as 22 on the board here. And then Jalen Waddle's ADP has dropped quite a bit. He's at 34.6. So basically, Tyreek Hill costs a late 2nd. Jalen Waddle costs a late 3rd. In terms of projections, I'm liking the price on Waddle better. I do have Tyreek Hill as wide receiver 16 and Jalen Waddle as wide receiver 15. So I'm going to take whoever falls to me in the 3rd. I think 3rd round value is kind of where these guys are going to end up providing the most value. So Waddle and Hill both in there for me. I don't even have Cedric Wilson charted on this very highly. Let me see if he even comes in here. Cedric Wilson's my wide receiver 94. So essentially in case of emergency, then we care about Cedric Wilson. And then at tight end, I do have Mike Gesicki here. He's my tight end 14. So kind of this similar thing as Dawson Knox. He's going to be boom bust, kind of that number 3 target that just doesn't always have the floor that we like here. So I'm into it. I think it could be nice, but let me just double check my running back numbers real quick too. I do have Chase Edmonds as my RB26. So he's going for almost over 1,000 all-purpose yards, but I think he's got a good receiving floor, 48 catches, 345 yards. So what, that's, roughly 3 or 4 catches per game. He should be a nice 8 to 10 point floor for PPR leagues. And again, if he's scoring touchdowns, he's going to be valuable. So that's your 2022 Miami Dolphins. Let's take a look at the New England Patriots. And this is a team that has done a good job of just adding more weapons to Mac Jones here, who Mac Jones, the clear #1 quarterback now. Brian Hoyer, Bailey Zappi, the quarterbacks behind him. But let's look at this running back field. I'm super interested in this because Damien Harris is there. You have Ramondre Stevenson, year 2. They drafted Pierre Strong in the 4th round. James White is there. Kevin Harris in the 6th round, and J.J. Taylor. So they have 6 running backs here that are all actually pretty solid. I think what you're going to see here is James White start the season on the PUP list. 6 games out, you're probably going to see a competition for that 3rd down running back to be the pass catcher. So Damien Harris, we know him to be the 1st and 2nd down guy while healthy. I do think we've heard reports of Ramondre Stevenson working harder to be a pass catcher and wanting to receive more, just be more of a every down back. So I think to open the season, if James White's on PUP list, you're going to see a lot of Ramondre Stevenson as a pass catcher, unless Pierre Strong can come in and beat him in protections and just being a better pass catcher. So that's the thing to watch the first month and a half or so. I think you're going to see a lot of Damien Harris and Ramondre Stevenson together. And then these guys just on the bench here, I mean, they could all make a nice dent here, but typically Bill Belichick doesn't like to give, these rookie running backs a lot of work. Ramondre Stevenson was an exception last year. And I just think in terms of drafting these guys, Damien Harris's ADP is a little disrespectful. I know he scored a lot of touchdowns last year. I still think he's going to be a very good running back, but he's being drafted at 86.9 overall. This is full PPR. And then let's see, Ramondre Stevenson down here at 109. So Harris costs an 8th round pick. Stevenson costs a 9th or a 10th round pick, depending on your 10 or 12 man league. So both guys, a little bit of a discount, and I think it's very cheap if you play best ball or you want to tag team these guys in your draft. Again, it only costs an 8th and a 9th round pick. You can just pencil that in for your fantasy draft, and hopefully you wind up with the Patriots backfield and just play it as is. But the real questions here is, who's Mac going to pass to? Of course, he had Hunter Henry on his touchdown speed dial last year towards the red zone. Jonnu Smith didn't get to play as much. You have Jacoby Myers, Kendrick Bourne. There's Devontae Parker. They added Tyquan Thornton in the draft. Nelson Aguilar still there. Ty Montgomery, a free agent addition out of New Orleans. N'Keal Harry still there. And then you got a bunch of guys here. Trey Nixon, Christian Wilkerson, Matt Slater, Malcolm Perry, Lil Jordan Humphrey. Trey Nixon actually was the guy that was making a ton of noise in their mini camp. So to me, it's the clear number 3 is Jacoby, Kendrick Bourne, Devontae Parker. After that, it's kind of no rules. There's been works of Tyquan Thornton working with the first team. Nelson Aguilar has been always boom bust. Ty Montgomery's still not a running back anymore. He's just kind of a gadget guy at this point. But keep an eye on Trey Nixon. I also want to see if N'Keal Harry gets let go. That'll be interesting. But it's, to me, there's a top 5 here: Jacoby, Kendrick, Devontae, Aguilar, and Tyquan. These are the 5 receivers going into. And I think it's very difficult to bank on these guys in redraft leagues. The one guy I do like is Jacoby Myers because he can be PPR friendly. But anything, this all kind of comes back to Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones, if you play in Superflex leagues, he could be a nice quarterback too for Superflex. And I guess if we just kind of look at this where I have everything adding up here, Mac Jones, I have him as my QB 20. That could, go up or down. But I think, again, he's kind of just a safe, steady RB2 for now. In terms of the running backs, I have Damien Harris at RB18, and I do have Ramondre at RB32. So, again, both guys I think are a value. In terms of the wide receiver position, I don't have anybody ranked in the top 40. I have Jacoby Myers right here at RB or wide receiver 41. You come down a little bit, that's where you'll find Kendrick Bourne and Devontae Parker. I have these guys both as bench players, guys that you could, throw on your bench as your 5th receiver and just see what happens. And then I do think Jacoby Myers is going to be a wide receiver 3 flex option for you. And then at tight end, Hunter Henry at tight end 16, he's going to be a guy that you consider flexing. And then I am still open to Jonnu Smith being a good player here. He just needs more play time. But I think it's all about Hunter Henry being a number 2 option for you. But let's move on and finish the 2022 AFC East. This is the New York Jets, a team that you guys should be excited about, but I kind of want to pump the brakes on for fantasy this season. Of course, it's all about Zach Wilson. He's got the clear starting job to start the season. At running back, they drafted Breece Hall, round 2. You have Michael Carter still behind him. They brought back Tevin Coleman. There's Ty Johnson, LaMichael Piron, and Zonovan Knight. It's basically all about Breece Hall, Carter, and then sprinkles of Coleman, I believe, there. At the receiver position, I believe Elijah Moore is going to be the lead dog. They did draft Garrett Wilson, though. They still have Corey Davis. And guess what? Braxton Berrios is still there. Denzel Mims still there. Jeff Smith still there. And then you got a couple interesting guys just trying to make the team back here. But it's kind of a clear, this is their top six. Who knows? Maybe Denzel Mims is on the outs. I'm not really sure what happens there. And then I'm super interested at the tight end position because they signed CJ Uzama from Cincinnati. They signed Tyler Conklin from Minnesota, and then they drafted Jeremy Ruckert out of Ohio State in the 3rd round. So they have a lot of brightness, for the future of the position here. But it sounds, by all accounts, Tyler Conklin is the tight end you want here. They really like him as a blocker. He's probably the superior blocker of this group, but he's also a damn good pass catcher. And it sounds like the Wilson to Conklin connection has been good. So I believe Tyler Conklin's a sleeper at the tight end spot. Not saying to draft him as a top 12 tight end, but he could be a useful tight end too, especially in best ball leagues. So how are we drafting these guys? I really don't want to end up with too many Jets on my team. I think for ADP reasons, Elijah Moore is probably one of the fairest guys here. If we look at ADP, Elijah Moore here going off. Elijah Moore costs a 66.3 ADP, so that's going to put him square in the 6th round. I think if you're drafting him in the 6th round, you're comparing him to guys like Thielen, Cooper, Godwin. Godwin should be lower, though. We think he's going to miss time. And then Russell Gage. So he's kind of square in the 6th round, which I think is fine. If you come on down farther, looking for Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson in the 9th, I think that could be fine. I just don't know if it's going to pay off there. I think I'd rather have guys like Olave or even Robert Woods in that range there. So I struggle to take Garrett Wilson there. And I'm probably not going to Corey Davis could be like one of your last players here. He's going at 148. So what? That's round 12, 13. And then after that, we're not interested. In terms of running back, though, that's where you see Breece Hall. His ADP is starting to slump a little bit. He was a little bit higher kind of a month or so ago, but now he's starting to fall into the end of the 4th round, which I think is fair. The 4-5 turn is extremely difficult this year. So if you wanted a guy that can be a running back 2 for you, go ahead and select him. I think he's more of an RB2 flex for me, though, a top 30 running back. And then after that, Michael Carter is dirt cheap. If anything happens to Breece Hall, you're looking at a guy here who could be a really fun RB2 for you. He's going at 128.5. 10th round ADP. So to lock up the Jets backfield, I don't know how valuable that is, but we will see. And then you have Zach Wilson all the way down here at pick 152. So the 13th round, 12th, 13th round of fantasy drafts here. He's going to be a quarterback 2 for Superflex leagues. And that's about it. As far as the tight end situation goes, the ADP has not caught up to this yet. You're going to see here CJ Uzama at 219, Tyler Conklin 225. They're starting to work their way back, but I think you're going to end up seeing Tyler Conklin approach the Mo Alley Cox 2 teens kind of range here. And again, as far as New York Jets here, I'm not excited to draft anybody. Basically, Breece Hall is a fine consolation at the end of the 4th round. If you don't like anybody there, go ahead and collect him. Otherwise, Elijah Moore, it's hard for me to spend a 6th round pick, especially if like a guy like Jalen Hurts or Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, quarterbacks available round 6. I have a hard time picking on these Jets. So for me, I'm kind of out unless someone falls. Again, I think Breece Hall is interesting heading around 4, and I'm opening up Tyler Conklin as a potential bench guy. But that's going to do it for the AFC East. We're going to move on here to the AFC North, and let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. I'm excited about Baltimore. I think you're going to expect this team to pass the ball more. Last year was interesting. They ended up throwing the ball probably the most in the Lamar Jackson era. They ended up with a team high 611 passing attempts last year. That's the most that I've charted in the last 5 years for the Ravens. And you see Lamar Jackson down here with 382 passing attempts, almost 64.5%. Nice yards per attempt here, but his touchdown to interception ratio was not good last year. He was not very accurate and just taking a lot of risks. So that does worry me a little bit. I think you're going to see him improve this year. Again, no Marquise Brown. No Sammy Watkins. What does this mean? Let's take a look here. So at quarterback position, you have Lamar Jackson. He's a top 5, top 10 quarterback when healthy. Tyler Huntley, though, he looked really, really interesting. If anything happens to Lamar Jackson, I think we could be looking at him off the waiver wire. But again, Lamar Jackson, where do I have him ranked? He is my quarterback 7. I think he's kind of the last of the Russian quarterbacks. I have this run of Wilson, Hurts, Murray, and then Lamar Jackson. Those guys are interchangeable. They all have a top 4 to 7 range of outcomes. I think they're all fringe top 5 guys. Just Lamar Jackson's, he's got some struggle weapons for this season. I liked him better when he had more last year. But anyways, the running back situation, J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards all expected back. They did add Mike Davis, which kind of, to me, pumps the brakes a little bit on these guys being healthy and ready to go to start the year. They drafted Tyler Batty in the 6th round here. Justice Hill still there. Ricky Person, Nate McCrary. So they do have a little bit better depth at running back here. And again, with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, Mike Davis, you're going to see more attention to the running game. Last year, this team was whipping out just absolute junk at running back position. They had Devonta Freeman as their lead ball carrier, Latavius Murray, Tyson Williams, Le'Veon Bell. So that's why they threw the ball more. They didn't have anybody to run the ball with. And so you're going to see the numbers tilt more towards J.K., Gus, Mike, and Tyler Batty. In terms of receivers, you have Rashad Bateman. There's a competition at the number 2, number 3 spot. They're basically, I kind of view them as co-starters. And basically, it's just going to be a difference of who's in the slot, who's in the outside. But you have Devin Duvernay and James Proche. After that, Tylan Wallace, maybe, Jalen Moore, Benjamin Victor. A bunch of guys are trying to make the team, but it's kind of like a 4-man race here. Bateman, Duvernay, Proche, and Tylan Wallace. Those are the top 4 receivers there. And, of course, it's all about Mark Andrews. Nick Boyle, the number 2, but keep an eye on Charlie Kohler and Isaiah Likely. I think these guys could be a lot of fun, and we'll give Nick Boyle a run for his money at the tight end 2 spot. So for fantasy football, how am I drafting these guys? Again, I love Lamar Jackson. In terms of ADP here, Lamar is being drafted. He's kind of the 4th quarterback off the board. He goes 53.7 overall, but sometimes, depending on the platform you play, he falls into the 6th. And I guess if this is the ADP, I'm waiting for Jalen Hurts there. So I would definitely take Jalen Hurts over Lamar. I like his rushing upside plus his receiving game a little bit better. So Lamar Jackson still a top 5, top 7 threat at running back position. You see J.K. Dobbins here at 56.3. He's basically a 5th round pick right now, and I'm interested in him. In terms of my projections, I have J.K. Dobbins as RB30, kind of the similar value. I have him in a tier basically with Elijah Mitchell, Antonio Gibson, J.K. Dobbins. Those guys aren't going to catch the ball a lot. They could lead their team in carries, yards, and touchdowns, but they're lacking that RB2 upside because of the lack of the passing game. So in a PPR league, I kind of view them as fringe RB2s. Let me get back to Gus Edwards. I like Gus Edwards, but I don't have him ranked very high. He's 53rd overall, just kind of a backup for now. Let's look at the wide receiver position. I got Rashad Bateman as our wide receiver 32, which puts him in the wide receiver 3 contention. He could be a top 30 receiver, make him wide receiver 3 flex. I like that. And then after that, there's really, again, it's James Proche or Devin Duvernay. I have a competition here. Duvernay is my wide receiver, 74, and Proche comes in, I don't see him anywhere, fringe top 100. So if anything, I guess I like Duvernay a little bit more. And then it's all about Mark Andrews. Drafting this team, you want Mark Andrews. Sometimes he falls into the 3rd round. I've seen him fall there. Otherwise, you have to pay a 2nd round pick for him. So in terms of hierarchy, I like Lamar Jackson in the 5th or the 6th rounds. J.K. Dobbins is interesting in the 5th. Andrews late 2nd to 3rd round is interesting. And I guess Duvernay late. So that's the 2022 Baltimore Ravens. Let's take a peek here at one of my favorite teams for fantasy this year. That's going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. And again, of course, Joe Burrow. After Burrow, Brandon Allen, Jake Browning, whatever. The running back position, that's going to be interesting because, of course, Joe Mixon, who we know has had some injury history throughout his time there. But then you're looking at Samaje Perine, Chris Evans. These are the clear number 2 and 3 backs. And there's reports of Chris Evans already coming out and potentially taking over the 3rd down role from Samaje Perine. And if anything, it's kind of bad news for Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine because apparently they're loving what they're seeing out of Chris Evans. He's a natural, really gifted wide receiver / running back. And who knows, if anything happens to Mixon, you're looking at Chris Evans being the 1A and Perine kind of being the 1B here. So keep an eye on Chris Evans. They still have Trayvon Williams, Elijah Holyfield, and Shamari Jones. At the receiver position, this is what everyone wants. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. After that, it's still junk. It's still, if one of those guys go down, the Bengals are in trouble. Stanley Morgan, Mike Thomas, Trent Taylor, those are the next 3 up. I guess Trenton Irwin and then you got a bunch of guys trying to make the team. So I do question the lack of development for a number 4, number 5 receiver. They don't use those guys. They've been healthy, the last 2 years. I guess last year they were very healthy with Higgins, Chase, and Boyd, but man, they really need to develop a number 4 or 5 receiver. And then at the tight end position, Hayden Hurst steps into the starting tight end for CJ Uzama. Drew Sample still there, Mitchell Wilcox, Thaddeus Moss, yada, yada, yada. So for fantasy, I guess the good news is, they added Lyle Collins, they added Alex Kappa, they added Ted Karras from New England. And you got Jonah Williams and Jackson Carman still holding down the fort. They added some bench pieces here, but this is going to be a really good offense this year. In terms of fantasy, let's actually look and see. Joe Mixon going off as 13.7 ADP. That's the first pick of the second round, essentially. If you want him there, anywhere in the second round is fair game. You can even think about him as 10th, 11th, 12th overall. Joe Burrow going off as pick 73. That's in, maybe the first pick of the 7th round, very interesting there, going over guys like Brady, Russell Wilson, which I think over Russell Wilson is a mistake. But let's look at these receivers. Jamar Chase, third receiver off the board at 5.8. So he costs the 5th or the 6th overall pick this year. T. Higgins, though, 24.5. That's the first pick of the 3rd round. You can get him, especially if you get that first overall pick, you're probably staring at T. Higgins for the 24th and 25th overall pick. So I love Higgins there. Tyler Boyd, though, is the big discount of the group here. Everyone's pumping up Chase and Higgins. Tyler Boyd taking a massive fall here to 112th overall for his ADP. So people are kind of sleeping on him. I do like Tyler Boyd as a bench piece or a potential best ball, just got to fill in your lineup. And then at tight end, we're looking at a lot of disrespect here for Hayden Hurst. And I know there's good reason, but 174th overall, the guy's going to end up catching 4 or 5 touchdowns. He's going to be a useful, tight end 2/3 for you. And I actually think he could be in for a lot of, fun games, because as a defense, you have to take away Mixon. You have to take away Chase and Higgins and Boyd. A lot of times Hayden Hurst is going to be that lone man where I think as long as Joe Burrow is looking for him, he could be in for a good season. In terms of in terms of my projections, I have Burrow as my quarterback 10. That's kind of fair value from what I've seen. I think it's tough to take Dak Prescott and Tom Brady. It's kind of a big tier for me. I have that Russell Wilson, Hurts, Murray, Jackson tier. But after that, I think there's this tier of Dak, Tom, and Joe where you can kind of nitpick there. In terms of running back, I have Joe Mixon as my RB7, so that 13th ADP is fair value there. I do have Chris Evans as a top 50 back. Keep an eye on him. I do have him as the lead pass catcher on that team. I guess not the Joe Mixon's still going to lead the team in receptions for running back, but Joe Mixon's going to Chris Evans is going to step into a bigger role. And then at the receiver position, Jamar Chase, wide receiver 3, T. Higgins, my wide receiver 11. So I have 2 wide receiver 1s on this team, and Tyler Boyd, my wide receiver 45. So a useful guy here. People are sleeping on him. And then you see, I do have Hayden Hurst as my tight end 25. So I think he's going to be an interesting guy. Good tight end number 3 for you. I have him at 4 touchdowns, over 500 yards. See where you can do. Good best ball option, I guess, at this point. Let's move it on to the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland's going to be tough. I'm gonna do this really quickly because we don't know what's going on with Deshaun Watson. I'm gonna assume Jacoby Brissett is the starting quarterback for almost the whole season. If that is the case, Jacoby Brissett, a QB3 for Superflex leagues. You're never going to use him, I think, in QB1 leagues. He's pretty much a Superflex guy, barely a top 30 quarterback, right? So with that in mind, Nick Chubb becomes an RB2 for me. Kareem Hunt's just an RB, top 30, top 36 running back. I'm not expecting Kareem Hunt to do very well with Jacoby. I would love to see him with Watson, but it's basically only Nick Chubb. That's the only Brown I'm going to want here. Sure, Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, David Bell, all intriguing wide receiver options here, but I think if it's Brissett the whole season, Amari Cooper, a wide receiver 3 flex, a top 36, top 40 receiver at best. I'm not interested in Donovan Peoples-Jones or David Bell at that point. And then the tight end position, just because it's tight end, I can see David Njoku as a fringe tight end 1, and that could be a nice security blanket for Jacoby Brissett. So I guess assuming Brissett's the QB, Chubb in the 3rd round, I think I would take Chubb in the 3rd round to be my RB2. David Njoku, Amari Cooper, those are really the only guys here. So I'm slightly nervous about this. Again, as it stands right now, I mean, I have Jacoby Brissett as my QB 32. I do have Watson starting about 4 games here, so that could change. But for now, Nick Chubb, my RB 14, Kareem Hunt, my RB 31, Amari Cooper is my wide receiver 37, and David Njoku, my tight end 15. So until we know more information, I'm not going to bother too much here with the Cleveland Browns. And then let's wrap up the AFC North here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. No Ben Roethlisberger. Mitchell Trubisky sounds like he has the command of the starting unit right now. It sounds like Mason Rudolph is even the number 2 quarterback going into this, and Kenny Pickett's been working with the threes. Najee Harris, the lead running back, not even a competition. Of course, Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland Jr., Mateo Durant, Jalen Warren, and Trey Edmonds all there, as well as Derek Watt. The wide receivers, no Juju. So you have Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool. There's George Pickens. They added him in the draft round 2. They also, plucked Miles Boykin from the Ravens, and then they drafted Calvin Austin in the 4th round. After that, Anthony Miller's there. Keep a note on him. Steven Sims is a decent special teamer. So you have some interesting guys trying to make the team. But newcomers, George Pickens, Calvin Austin, we'll keep an eye on for them. And then it's Big Pat. Pat Freiermuth has the tight end job all to himself. Zach Gentry is there. Connor Hayward, Kevin Rader, Jay Sternberger, all there. So for fantasy, I guess the big implication here is Ben Roethlisberger retires, kind of a dink and dunk master the last couple seasons here. So that really boosted a guy like Deontay Johnson. But now you have Mitchell Trubisky coming in there. And Trubisky actually played some really nice seasons there with the Bears offense. Allen Robinson was useful. Jimmy Graham had some seasons there. Mitch could throw the ball to his running backs too here. So I do think there's room for these guys all to have fantasy value. I think Deontay Johnson, though, is going to probably take the biggest hit with, going down from Ben to Trubisky. I think Trubisky is a guy that's going to air the ball out a little bit more. He's going to look for Chase Claypool a little bit more. He's going to look for Pat. He's not going to be, the 4-step drop and just pummel it to Deontay. So I do think there's going to be a little bit more spread out football going on this year. In terms of my projections, I guess Trubisky, I have him starting the majority of games here. I gave Pickett, looks like 3. I gave Pickett maybe 2 to 3 games here. Mitchell Trubisky coming in as my quarterback 28. In terms of running back here, Najee Harris, continue to take Najee Harris. He's my RB6 in terms of running back ADP. Najee Harris going on at 8.8. He's a top 10 pick. Go ahead and continue to take him. Who knows? Maybe he scores more touchdowns this year. He could end up being a better fantasy player. In terms of the wide receivers here, so I am lower on Deontay Johnson. He's my 23rd wide receiver for ADP. People are drafting him 39th overall, up by DJ Moore. And I think that's a mistake. I'm taking Cortland Sutton. I'm taking Terry McLaurin over guys like him. I think Deontay probably, again, his ADP of 39, that puts him as one of the first picks in the 4th round. To me, he's more of a 5th round pick. Again, I could see him more going up against, it's just tough. I think I'm about a round off on Deontay Johnson. In terms of Chase Claypool, though, at 104.1, that's a 9th round ADP. To potentially get a wide receiver 3 flex. I got Chase Claypool coming in as my, wide receiver 39. So a guy that you could potentially use as a flex play this year. And then at tight end, you have Pat Freiermuth actually being slept on a little bit here. Tight end 134.8. That's in the 13th round of fantasy. I guess that's end of the 11th round. So I'm interested in Pat Freiermuth at those prices. And don't be afraid to take the Steelers. I think this team could be pesky. They're going to be competitive. And I think we could see a nice revival from Mitch Trubisky this year. And hopefully the team can just, keep ahead in the playoff race. 9-10 wins is doable for these guys. But that'll wrap up the AFC North. Again, this is a long video. Thank you for hanging out with us. I'm just going to take a drink right quick here. And then we'll get into the AFC South. Now, the AFC South probably has the least amount of fantasy players you want to use. So with that in mind, we will be quick with the AFC South, and I think I'd rather spend more time talking to you guys about the AFC West. So Houston Texans, we'll just review the depth chart real quick. Davis Mills, no matter how you feel about it, he's a fringe quarterback too for Superflex leagues. Kyle Allen, Jeff Driscoll, Kevin Hogan are the backups. The running back field is a little bit of a joke, but you have Marlon Mack, Rex Burkhead, the rookie Damian Pierce, Royce Freeman, Dare Ogunbowale, and Darius Anderson. So a lot of veteran journeyman here trying to make a job here. And we'll see if Dameon Pierce can make anything of it by the end of the season. At the receiver position, of course, you still have Brandon Cooks. Nico Collins is the big number 2. John Mechie, though, the starting slot receiver, could be in for a lot of fun as a rookie. You have some backups here. Chris Conley, Philip Dorsett, Chris Moore. There's Jalen Camp. And then you got a bunch of guys trying to make the team here. But the pecking order is clearly Cooks, Collins, Mechie. So it's an improved receiving group here, adding Mechie at the receiver position. And then the tight end, Brevin Jordan, Farrell Brown, Tegan Quitoriano, and that's about it. There's just some guys trying to make the team here. But don't sleep on Brevin Jordan. I think this is a team. We'll find out what Davis Mills is made of. This is kind of a make or break year. If they find that they have enough with Davis Mills, they can go forth and find a stud running back to get this offense fired up here. But I think it's kind of a stretch play for these guys in terms of quarterback numbers here. I do have Davis Mills as my quarterback 27. Again, super flex leagues, I'm interested. I don't have any Houston running back in my top 45. I mean, if you want one, Marlon Mack, sure. Or just make Dameon Pierce your last pick. And the thing is, you're going to need patience with a guy like Dameon Pierce. That's really all you could have there. And then maybe Rex Burkhead if you want to just, tug at your heartstrings and see what you can find there. And then in terms of receivers, basically it's Brandon Cooks. He's the only Houston Texan I'm allowed to recommend here. If you get into real late drafts of best ball leagues, I suppose John Mechie or Nico Collins can have a lot of fun in that department here, but I wouldn't bake on anything too much. And then the tight end, I guess Brevin Jordan, a guy here who I has as a fringe tight end too. So that's enough time on the Texans. Again, it's all about Davis Mills, who I think can be a nice player, but we'll see here. I'm not going to risk too much, though, besides Brandon Cooks. The Colts, this should be the front runner to win the division, adding, of course, Matt Ryan. Nick Foles added as well, so the backup quarterback situation is on a lock. Jonathan Taylor, Naheem Hines. Adding Phillip Lindsay was a nice move there. You have Deion Jackson, and then Devontae Price and C.J. Verdell, both UDFAs that I thought were really good pickups, and Tyson Williams. So the running back room is loaded. At receiver, Michael Pittman Jr. leads the way. Tons of Paris Campbell hype right now, coming back as the wide receiver too. They did draft Alec Pierce to be the starting outside receiver, and then after that, it's really thin, guys. At receiver, Mike Strawn, Desmond Patton, Ashton Doolin, to Michael Harris, Kiki Cutie, and then a bunch of guys are trying to make the team. So to me, I've always thought that if Julio Jones is going to sign somewhere, it's got to be here with Matt Ryan and the Colts. They could use an outside receiver here, even to kind of teach Alec Pierce what's going on. So I would love to see Julio Jones here, but it looks like Pittman Jr., Pierce, and Campbell, those are the top 3 receivers. The tight end position, Mo Lee Cox has it all to himself. People are kind of sleeping on him. There's Kylan Granson, who they took in the 4th round last year. They loved him. And then they go out and draft Jelani Woods in the 3rd round and Andrew Ogletree here. So we'll watch for these guys. But in terms of fantasy, it's really simple. Matt Ryan, QB2 for fantasy football. Again, I have Matt Ryan here as my QB 23. So he's not going to offer too much in the rushing game, but he can be a 4,000-yard passer. Running back, of course, I don't have to sell you on Jonathan Taylor, but I just want to remind you, Naheem Hines, if you guys play best ball leagues, Naheem Hines can be of value. Let me see where he's being drafted. Naheem Hines going off at 124.4 ADP. That's a 10th or 11th round pick. That's fine. He's probably going to end up catching maybe 4 or 5 touchdowns this year. Probably going to end up being like their 2nd or 3rd leading player in reception. So don't sleep on Naheem Hines. I think with Matt Ryan there, they're going to throw the ball a little bit more. In terms of receiver, I'm all in on Michael Pittman Jr. The fact that he's being drafted at the 29.8 ADP, wide receiver 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Wide receiver 13 off the board. I think that's tremendous value. I have Pittman up here as my wide receiver 9. Again, with Carson Wentz, he was wide receiver 15 last year. So I'm all aboard Michael Pittman. The fact that you can get him as the wide receiver 13 off the board right now, that's a win for me. He's going to be a wide receiver 1. And then, I mean, guys like Alec Pierce and Paris Campbell, they're free. I mean, if you play in a redraft league and you want to try it, go ahead. Otherwise, I think I'd stay away. In terms of best ball, though, Alec Pierce, 173. And then Paris Campbell starting to come around 198. So those guys are interesting bench pieces. And then the tight ends, Mo Ali Cox. I don't think Jelani Woods, Alec Ogletree, Kylan Granson are going to make that much noise. I do think this is Mo Ali's last season here. I have him as my tight end 23, so not a super high investment, but a guy for best ball leagues. Can see him catching 4 or 5 touchdowns. And yeah, Matt Ryan has always been good throwing the tight end. So that's it for the Colts. Again, the one team from the AFC South where I think there's there's fruit on that team. Jacksonville Jags, man, this is a fun team. I actually think this might be one of my second favorite offenses in this division here. Of course, Trevor Lawrence has the starting job. CJ Beathard is a nice backup there. At running back, they're still listing James Robinson as the starter, but it's Travis Etienne, Snoop Connor, who they drafted in the 5th round, Raquel Armstead, and then some guys just trying to make the team. The wide receiver position, though, this was the biggest upgrade of the team. You have Christian Kirk, now the leading slot receiver. Marvin Jones is back for year 2. Zay Jones, they added him and signed him to a good deal here to be their 3rd starting receiver. You still have Laviska Shenault. This actually pushes him to wide receiver 4. Laquan Treadwell did some nice things last year. Jamal Agnew did some nice things last year as well. And then after that, just some guys trying to make the team, but it's kind of a 6-man rotation here. And again, it's more about Christian Kirk being the starting slot receiver, Zay Jones and Marvin Jones being the outside receivers, and I think they're going to try and mix Laviska in there with Zay Jones or Marvin Jones to keep that alive. So it's a 4-man rotation for me. I'm all about Christian Kirk with his value, and then Evan Ingram with Dan Arnold, Chris Manhertz, Luke Farrell, a really, really underrated tight end group. And again, with Doug Peterson being the head coach, I think you could see nice numbers from both tight ends. Again, it makes it difficult here. If you're drafting Jaguars today, it's Christian Kirk. That's the one I think you can hang your hat on and say he will be involved. They paid him too much, to not, give him the ball. And then again, I like Trevor Lawrence, ETN. We'll talk about that in a second here, but let's look at the numbers for quarterback. I have Trevor Lawrence as my QB 17, so draft him, in best ball as your QB 2. Draft him in redraft to be your QB 2. I think he could have some nice numbers this year. I think if you're playing super flex leagues, that's where he can be of his most use. And in terms of running back, I have Travis Etienne as my RB 16. Now, he is being drafted a little too high for me at the moment right now, which is technically he's the 33rd player off the board. So if I did the math here, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So he's going as the RB 16 off the board. It's just going to cost you a 3rd round pick to do it. So if that comes down in the 4th round, I'm interested. James Robinson still being drafted. Again, a lot of unknown with J-Rob here. Let me look for him. I can't find him anywhere. James Robinson, 190 overall. I think at that point, I'm probably going to start to trickle James Robinson up in my rankings. I do think it's going to take him some time to be himself, but they're saying all the right things. So don't sleep on James Robinson. In terms of wide receivers, again, I do have Christian Kirk as wide receiver 35 for ADP. That's going to put Christian Kirk at 86.1, which is an 8th round pick, up against guys like Hopkins, Lazard, Lockett, Kadarius Toney. I think it's safe to say Christian Kirk's probably going to lead that team in receptions. So continue to do that. After that, I guess, there's Marvin Jones as wide receiver 65 for me. And that's kind of a stretch after that. Zay Jones, wide receiver 76. So those guys can be of use. And then at the tight end position, Evan Ingram's my tight end 26. So a guy that you could maybe put on your bench and see what happens. So it's still murky, I guess, if I'm being honest here. Trevor Lawrence is probably the best player to take to just kind of collect this whole offense. And then ETN, man, if he comes down in the 4th round, I'm interested. But we gotta wait for more reports on James Robinson. So that'll be the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tennessee Titans, interesting team. I'll be quick about this one too. You have Ryan Tannehill back, Malik Willis, they drafted him in the 3rd. Derrick Henry is back. After that, it's going to be a battle for the number 2 spot. I think it's going to be a committee. If anything happens to Henry, it's going to be Haskins. Hassan Haskins as the 1st and 2nd down back with Dontrell Hilliard as the receiving back. In terms of receiver, no A.J. Brown, which hurts. It hurts a lot. You have Robert Woods, Traylon Burks, and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. After that, it's a lot of junk. You have Des Fitzpatrick, who they drafted in the 4th round last year, Racing McMath in the 6th round last year, Kyle Phillips, who they added in the 5th round of this year. And it's a lot of junk. This is, one of the worst receiving groups in the league. I think Robert Woods is the one you want this year. It sounds like he's doing really great after his injury from last year. And Traylon Burks, man, In terms of dynasty, I still like him for what he's going to be as in the future, but right now he's struggling to get on the field with asthma, and it just sounds like the conditioning is a problem. They did add Austin Hooper though as tight end, so I think that's a sneaky move. Jeff Swaim, another solid tight end here too. In terms of fantasy football, I mean, I think the days are done for Ryan Tannehill being a QB1. I have him as basically a QB2 in Superflex leagues. In terms of running back, I still have Henry as a top 5 back, but I think, I mean, if I'm being real, I have him tied with Najee Harris for points. I'm taking Najee Harris over him, so I think he's the 6th or the 7th running back off the board for me. In terms of wide receivers, I do have Robert Woods as a fringe top 30 receiver, so I think he can return wide receiver 3 values. After that, I do like Treylon Burks, but he's probably not a guy I'm willing to trust, especially for his ADP right now. 93rd overall? No. Give me some of the guys in this range here, some of the running backs we talked about earlier in this video. And then Austin Hooper, he might be the one guy that makes sense here as the backup tight end. I actually have Austin Hooper as tight end 22. Again, a guy here who could be unleashed again with Ryan Tannehill, and it sounds like he's been one of his favorite targets so far this season. So, but again, I promise we will be quick on the AFC South. Let's go ahead and finish up with the AFC West, the best division in football, I think hands down. Of course, the Denver Broncos. At the top, you have Nathaniel Hackett, Justin Otten, and some new defensive special teams coordinators here, but it's all about Russell Wilson. They did have Josh Johnson and Brett Ripien as the backups, but it's all about Russell Wilson. Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon, who they re-signed here. Mike Boone is back. Demario Crockett. And I've got some guys trying to make the team here, but I'm super interested in the split between Javonte and Melvin Gordon. Now, this regime, they didn't draft Javonte. They didn't originally sign Melvin Gordon. So I think anything that we saw last year doesn't mean that that's going to happen again. At the receiver position, you have Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, and I'll add in KJ Hamler. Those are the clear top 4 receivers here. I still like Seth Williams, Kendall Hinton, and I think Montrell Washington will be the 7th receiver kept. Tight end, losing Noah Fant here to the Seahawks. You have Albert Okwuegbunam, Greg Dulcich, who they drafted in the 3rd round, and then some guys here. We'll see who ends up being the number 3. But it sounds like Dulcich is having a nice camp here, but it's all about Albert O. So for me, this is one of the offenses you want to try and get somebody in because everybody is reasonably priced. Russell Wilson right now, like, are you kidding me? He's going as the 82nd player off the board in terms of quarterbacks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He's the 9th QB off the board, and I have him as my QB4. I have him in that tier of Hurts, Murray, Lamar, and then I guess Russell Wilson. So I think he can be a top 5 quarterback this season. I love drafting him. In terms of running back, Javonte Williams, again, last year, this split was almost 50-50, right down the middle. I think they had like the same amount of carries. I do have Javonte as my 12th overall running back. I think he can be a fringe running back 1. However, if you're drafting Javonte, you want him as your RB2. That's where he looks the best. Again, you don't want to leave him hanging as your RB1. I think putting him in as your RB2 is where it looks best. And technically, he's a 3rd round pick right now. Let me double check that. Javonte, 24.1. So I guess if you start your draft with CMC or Jonathan Taylor, you can come back and you can slam Javonte Williams in there as your RB2. I think that's where things look really good, or basically anywhere in that 3rd round, that's where he looks good. And then I guess let me see where I got Melvin Gordon. I'm not interested in Melvin Gordon. I do have him as my RB38. He's a flex guy. We'll see what happens with him. But again, another year older. I think more hype for Javonte Williams as the summer camps roll on. But the receivers, I think Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, and KJ Hamler all should be being drafted in best ball leagues. It sounds like from all the buzz in Denver training camp, and we know Jerry Jeudy had some off-the-field issues, it sounded like Cortland Sutton was the one that blew everybody away. His connection with Russell Wilson seemed to be the one that stuck out. So I am going all in on Cortland Sutton. I think he's a top 10, top 12 receiver. Keep in mind, the Seattle Seahawks junk offense, the let Russ cook offense. I mean, we were drafting DK Metcalf in the 2nd round, Tyler Lockett in the 3rd or 4th round last year, and that's a team that just they were productive with those 2 players, but they were like the worst offense in the league in terms of plays per game and just pace and getting more opportunities. So Russell Wilson did a lot with those 2 receivers, and I just think Cortland Sutton, he can be your wide receiver 1. Jerry Jeudy, he can be a wide receiver 2, maybe even more than Courtland Sutton. It wouldn't surprise me if he beats Courtland Sutton, but I think the point is you want Courtland Sutton in the 4th round. You want Jerry Jeudy in the 4th or the 5th round this year. And then you continue to take Tim Patrick. Like, Tim Patrick is a damn good receiver, and people need to remember that, again, as the number 3 receiver in this offense, he's going to have value. He's going to probably 5, 6, 7 touchdowns. And again, as the wide receiver number 3 on this team, he's going to be on the field a lot. He's being drafted 128.4 overall, which is what, an 11th round pick, 10th, 11th round pick. Continue to do that. And KJ Hamler's free, so continue to draft your Broncos. And then the tight ends, Albert Okwuegbunam. I thought I'd be higher on him after doing my numbers. He comes in at tight end number 19, which I think is a nice. Basically, after the top 10 or so, you want to draft. Say you miss the top 10 that I have highlighted here, you want to draft at least 2 of these guys, to make a duo. So I think Albert O can be a nice duo guy, but Dulcich, they're saying nice things about him. So draft your Broncos, one of my favorite teams to draft from this season. Kansas City Chiefs. Slightly nervous about life after Tyreek, but you still have Patrick Mahomes, Chad Henne, some guys just trying to make the team here as number 3. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, starting running back. Ronald Jones, they added him from Tampa Bay. They re-signed Jerick McKinnon to play a pass-catching role, and then Derek Gore. Then you get some guys just trying to make the team here, but these guys are interesting. Isaiah Pacheco, Tayon, Fleet Davis, and Jaren Ely, but it's pretty much these top 4 backs here or bust. And then the wide receiver overhaul here. I don't know which one to list as the wide receiver 1. I think you're looking at 4 receivers here that are going to be kind of interchangeable. Juju Smith-Schuster, Mecole Hardman, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and Sky Moore. Now, what is interesting is let's actually look at the Kansas City Chiefs salary cap. And I just want to show you who they're paying the most. So as far as pass catchers, Travis Kelce being paid almost $9 million this season. Marquez Valdes-Scantling being paid just under $5 million this year. That puts him as the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is the 7th highest paid Kansas City Chief this year, which is alarming. So keep that in mind. Mecole Hardman is the 9th highest paid Chief, just over basically $4.5 million here. There's Juju. So Juju's not even the highest paid receiver on his team. He's the 3rd highest receiver, just under $3 million. Scroll on farther down, we'll see here Sky Moore down here. So that's kind of the pecking order. So you have 4 receivers all being paid here. But man, I think the one that could return the best value on draft day is probably Marquez Valdes-Scantling or Mecole Hardman. Juju, good candidate to be the number 2, number 3, guy in receptions here, but feels a little hard to trust. The money, especially you follow the money. They didn't pay him a lot here. And then they go out and draft a guy like Sky Moore, who can kind of be the same slot receiver here. So I'm interested probably more in Sky Moore than I am Juju. If I want to take a bet on a best ball type play receiver, it's MBS or Mecole Hardman. And then the tight end, of course, all roads lead back to Travis Kelce, who I think has again, number 1, number 2 tight end season in his grasp here. He's being drafted 9.5 ADP, which is interesting. It's a little high for me. I think an underdog that's a little bit lower. He's still my tight end 1. In terms of wide receivers, you have Juju Smith-Schuster. Right in between Brandon Cooks and Rashad Bateman, over Jerry Jeudy, which just feels wrong, over Darnell Mooney. So I think Juju, 54.5, he's more of a 6th round value for me. I'm not drafting him in the 5th. Give me some of the other guys later. Again, you have MBS in the 9th or 8th round here. You have Mecole Hardman even later. I guess Sky Moore being in the 10th, 11th round is interesting. And then again, Mecole Hardman in the 11th, 12th round, it just seems insane. So I'm out probably on Juju in the 5th, open to him in the 6th. But it's all about the running back position, I think, with the Chiefs. You're going to miss out on a lot of those short Tyreek Hill stuff, but I think you're going to see a greater focus on the running backs. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's the only running back that's going to catch passes not named Jerick McKinnon. Last year, you saw Darrell Williams finish as a top 24 running back. He's gone. So a lot of that, I know McKinnon's going to have more work here, but you're talking about a role for Darrell Williams that's going to be divided up between all these guys. And I just think Ronald Jones doesn't catch the ball. Derek Gore, they don't really do much with him. It's going to all be about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think, this year. So he's being drafted ADP of 78. I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire as my RB20. And again, Last year, Darrell Williams splitting time with Clyde. He was RB21, so I think people are sleeping on the ceiling of Clyde Edwards. This is kind of his floor to me. I think he's going to be a low end RB2 with a much higher upside. So I'm drafting Clyde anywhere I can right now in the 7th, 8th round, which is just, it feels stupid. And then, of course, quarterback. Mahomes, the third quarterback off the board. I do have him as my quarterback 3. I haven't been drafting him a lot just because he costs a 4th or a 5th round pick. I'm still taking some other guys there, but as his ADP falls into the 5th round, I'm open to it. But again, I love drafting the Chiefs. But if I'm drafting guys, of course, it's Kelsey, it's Clyde, and then after that, I guess take a whack-a-mole on one of these wide receivers. We're almost done with this video here. We'll go on to the Las Vegas Raiders. Let me take a drink here before we get rolling. Probably the candidate for like the most improved offense this year in real life and for fantasy. So, of course, new regime here for Josh McDaniels, Mick Lombardi, Patrick Graham. You have Derek Carr returning here. Backups, Jarrett Stidham, Nick Mullins, Chase Garbers here. So interesting ties. You'll see some New England players laced throughout this roster here. There's Josh Jacobs, who they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. Kenyon Drake, Brandon Bolden. And then they draft Zamir White from Georgia in the 4th round. There's Amir Abdullah and Britton Brown. So they draft 2 running backs in this new regime. 2 running backs here. Don't resign Josh Jacobs. Interesting. And then, of course, the major headline here is they go and get Davante Adams. They have Hunter Renfrow back. There's Keelan Cole, Demarcus Robinson, Tyron Johnson, Matt Collins, and then some guys just trying to make the team down here. But it's going to be all about Davante, all about Hunter Renfrow. After that, it's kind of a crapshoot. They did lose Zay Jones and they lost Brian Edwards, which I think will hurt in the long run. They like to, intertwine those guys. But we'll see Keelan Cole. Keelan Cole's a guy I'm interested in as if they do 3 wide receiver sets, he could be that 3rd receiver out there. And then Darren Waller, of course, Foster Moreau, Jacob Hollister, some guys trying to make the team. So this is a team here that I think they have players at every level. Derek Carr is going to be a fringe QB1. Josh Jacobs can be a solid RB2. You got Davante Adams and Hunter Renfrow both being useful, and then of course Darren Waller. So there's a lot to like in terms of ADP. You do have Derek Carr, about 102.6, above Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins. So he's kind of in this tier for me of a fringe quarterback 1. Again, I have Rodgers, Cousins, Stafford, and Carr. These are kind of the last of the true QB1 potential guys. He's my QB 15, so I like him. He's one of the ideal QB2s for Superflex leagues. In terms of running backs, I do have Jacobs as my RB 17. Let's see where he ends up here. Jacobs, kind of disrespected in drafts right now. He's 58.7, which puts him, at the end of the 5th round, going back to like the 5th round. Like, remember we talked about Juju being there? I'm taking Josh Jacobs in the 5th round over a guy like Juju. Just feels really safe. He's, a damn good runner. He's involved in the passing game. He gets the touchdowns. And again, thinking about this team, just adding Davante and a couple other pieces here and there, they're going to move the ball better than they have in the past, which is going to be more red zone opportunities for guys like Darren Waller, Davante, Renfrow, Josh Jacobs. There's going to be more opportunities for Jacobs to get more touchdowns. So I'm all in on Jacobs, especially if it's a 5th or 6th round ADP. I'm liking that. Jacobs can be your RB2 in the 5th round. And then go down a little bit farther. Kenyon Drake as a bench player, best ball guy, could catch 2-3 touchdowns. I'm just worried about Josh McDaniels doing some New England Patriots things to this running back field. But for now, I'm going to continue to bank on Jacobs being the workhorse. In terms of wide receiver, I got Davante up here as my wide receiver 7. I don't think I can take him in the 1st round because I have 6 receivers ahead of him. I think it's clearly obvious to me that he's going to be due for some touchdown regression. With Aaron Rodgers, he was a touchdown specialist there. Derek Carr doesn't throw enough touchdowns to mimic what Davante's been accustomed to in Green Bay. So you're going to see the touchdown numbers come down. You're going to see, I think, a little bit more inefficiency. Like Adams was a target hog, and through that, Rodgers was so damn good at delivering him the ball that his receptions and his catch rate was just insanely high. Now it sounds like Hunter Renfrow is going to be the slot receiver still. You're not going to see Davante Adams move into the slot as much, and that's where he made his money with Green Bay. So kind of a head scratcher here. I like Hunter Renfrow better at ADP. Renfro is my wide receiver 36. In terms of ADP, I mean, you've got Devontae as 11.6, which is basically the 11th or 12th overall pick in the draft. Whereas Hunter Renfro, you can get Renfro in the end of the 6th, 7th round, that intrigues me more. So don't sleep on Hunter Renfro. And then in terms of Darren Waller, people are sleeping on Darren Waller. I have him as my tight end number 3. Now, of course, his target share is going to come down, but I think his efficiency could go up. His yards after catch could go up. Again, you have a guy like Devonta Adams on the outside. That's going to open things up for him and Renfro in the middle. So good luck defending the middle of the field. I think it's going to be a feast. Darren Waller, I think he's being drafted as the tight end 4 off the board too. Yeah, after Kyle Pitts, which seems like a mistake. You have Pitts going as 32. Darren Waller in the 4th round. I'm totally cool with that. And I think there's a huge gap. It's Kelsey, Andrews, Waller, and then a huge gap, to Pitts and Kittle and Schultz. So continue taking Darren Waller. Be excited about the Raiders. I think it's going to be a fun fantasy offense. And then last but not least, I think this is the team. I think the Chargers are the team to beat in the AFC if I had to pick. Of course, you have the Chargers, you have the Buffalo Bills, you have the Broncos. Those are probably my favorite teams, but the Chargers, my number 1 team to draft for fantasy because they have so much. You can legit grab a guy. Like you could start the whole Chargers offense. You could grab Austin Eckler in the 1st, Mike Williams in the 2nd, or Keenan Allen in the 3rd, and Justin Herbert in the 4th. That could be a lot of fun there if you're a Charger fan. But anyways, to recap the Chargers, Herbert, starting QB, Chase Daniel, Easton Stick, Brandon Peters is there. At running back, this is where they got a little bit interesting. Austin Eckler's still the man there, but they draft a falling knife in Isaiah Spiller. Josh Kelly, Larry Roundtree still there. Lenny Brown and Kevin Marks are there to compete. But it's all about Isaiah Spiller. Let's see what he can do as the number 2. At the receiver position, of course, Mike Williams signs a big deal. Keenan Allen is back. I believe Allen turns like 30 this year, 32. Does it say his age? Yeah, he ends up turning, he's 30 right now, so it's age 30 season. We'll see if Allen can cash in another big one here. And then it sounds like Josh Palmer's been the clear number 3 guy here, but Jalen Guyton is the guy that they like to sub in, so the kind of a 4-man rotation there. This is the team that probably needs to prepare for life after Keenan Allen soon, so they need a new slot receiver. Maybe we'll see some guys here rotate in at some point this season. And then at tight end, Gerald Everett, they signed him from Seattle, and then Donald Parham Jr., there's Trey McKitty, some guys trying to make the team. So, but either way, again, I mentioned this is a team you want to be a part of. This team, so many opportunities, so many touchdowns, so many 2-point conversions they go for it on 4th down. It's so fun. I have Justin Herbert as my QB2. And for where he's being drafted, at one point, he was being drafted as the 3rd or the 4th QB off the board. It's kind of corrected itself here. You see he's got an ADP of about 45, which is mid-4th, the end of the 4th round. If you can get him in the 5th round, I think that's where I like his value. And if someone's going to take Allen and Mahomes off the board, then you can just go ahead and say, I'm just going to take Herbert because I know he's a top 3 QB. He could be the number 1, could be number 2. I think he's a guaranteed top 3 QB. So I love Herbert there. Eckler as the 3rd running back off the board, 5th overall. I have no problem with that. He is my RB3, and he's really not that much different from Christian McCaffrey. I have him a half-point difference. I could argue Eckler could be the number 2 running back, so no problem there. And then just as backup duties, take a flyer on Isaiah Spiller. Where's he being drafted right now? Isaiah Spiller is being drafted really late, 139. That puts that man in the 13th round of fantasy drafts. So don't be shy there. He's going to be the clear number 2 back, and I think his future is pretty bright there. But this receiving group, this is where you want to be. Mike Williams, I have him ranked higher. Keenan Allen is being drafted ahead of him right now at 27.4 ADP, which is the 3rd pick in the 3rd round in a 12-team league. And Mike Williams smack dab there at about 30 ADP. So both guys, 3rd round picks, top 30 selections. I actually am higher on Mike Williams. I have Mike Williams as my RB or my wide receiver 8, Keenan Allen as my wide receiver 12. So I think they both can return top 12 value. I love taking those guys when I can get them. And again, I prefer Mike Williams. And then don't sleep on this Josh Palmer. I think if you play best ball leagues, Palmer is going to be the clear #3 receiver for me. And then Jalen Guyton, just another guy here. If you miss on him, if you miss on Palmer, go get Jalen Guyton. He's the field stretcher for them. And then at the tight end position, I have Gerald Everett as my tight end 18, kind of in between Tunyon and Albert O. Gerald Everett is being drafted 160th overall, which is the 13th, 14th round to be your tight end 2, which just feels wrong. So I like getting Everett when I can. Again, I'm all in on this Chargers team. I've been drafting Eckler, Herbert, both Williams and Keenan Allen. I've been snagging Palmer and I've been snagging Everett, and now I have to try and continue to get Jalen Guyton on my team. So I'm all aboard the 2022 Chargers, and I think you guys should be too. This was a lot of fun. I hope you guys learned something. We're wrapping this video up now. I think the AFC it's got so much juice, man. You want to be involved in some of these teams. Basically, if it's an AFC West player, I want them. AFC South, I can pass on AFC South guys. I think if you're deciding between a AFC West receiver and an AFC South receiver, don't even make that decision. Just go with AFC West. But then keep an eye on this AFC North. I think it's going to be a lot of competitiveness. Ravens, Bengals, even the Steelers can be kind of pesky. But the East, man, go ahead and get your Buffalo Bills. Grab some Dolphins. I think Jalen Waddle in the 3rd round is a lot of fun here. Don't sleep on that Patriots offense, and be cautious about that Jets offense. I think a lot of people are going to maybe be a year early on it, but lots to like in the AFC. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. You can look forward to my AFC or my NFC video coming out probably on Friday. I think on Friday I'll put that video out. Again, this was Wednesday night. AFC video is complete. Thank you guys so much for your time. Don't forget to like the video. That helps grow the channel. Subscribe if you're new. And I know it's difficult to share fantasy stuff, especially when you find something or someone that you like does a good job. You don't want to share it with your friends. You want to hold on to that. But I would appreciate it if you guys share it. All that good stuff help us grow. And thank you again so much for your time. We'll see you in a future video. Peace.